When I first met Anna, it felt like the universe had stitched her into the fabric of my life. We locked eyes at a friend's party, and her laughter carried across the room, filling the space like sunlight through an open window. She was magnetic, sharp wit, disarming smile, and a way of looking at you that made the world vanish. We were inseparable after that night. Our love story was textbook, really, whirlwind romance, candlelit proposals, and a wedding that felt like something out of a movie. Life together was good. Great, even. We bought a modest house in the suburbs, fixed it up, and turned it into our little sanctuary. Saturday mornings were spent laughing over pancakes, and our evenings revolved around wine and deep conversations on the patio. When we decided to have kids, the excitement was palpable. Just think, Anna would say, her hands protectively over her stomach long before we even started trying. A little version of us running around. It didn't happen right away, but when we finally welcomed our son Caleb into the world, I felt like we'd cracked the code of happiness. He had Anna's big, brown eyes and my stubborn cowlick. Our world felt complete. Years passed, and life fell into a rhythm. We were happy, or so I thought. Sure, there were the occasional arguments, the stress of balancing work and family life, and the inevitable monotony that creeps into any long-term relationship, but nothing felt insurmountable. Anna seemed content, and I was, too. Then, one night, something shifted. It was subtle at first, like catching a note of discord in a familiar song. Anna had been more distracted lately, her phone always glued to her hand, her laughter a little forced. "Work's been intense," she'd say when I asked, her smile tight. I didn't push. Anna had always been independent, and I loved that about her. I figured she'd tell me when she was ready. But a seed of doubt had been planted, and it began to grow. It started innocently enough. Anna's phone would buzz late into the night, and she'd silence it quickly, saying it was just a group chat with her coworkers. I didn't think much of it. Anna had always been popular, and I trusted her implicitly. Still, the buzzing kept happening, and she seemed to spend more time staring at her screen, her fingers flying across the keyboard. One evening, while we were on the couch watching a movie, her phone lit up with a message. She grabbed it, her smile flickering on for a moment before she turned the screen away from me. "Who's that?" I asked casually, trying not to sound accusatory. "Just Jasmine from work," she said quickly, locking the screen. "She's planning her sister's wedding and needed some advice." That might have been the end of it if it weren't for the way her cheeks turned a faint shade of pink. Anna wasn't a good liar, never had been, and that subtle blush set off a quiet alarm in my mind. After that, I started noticing little things. Anna's usual chatter about her day became vague. "Oh, just meetings," she'd say, brushing off my questions. She started going to the gym more often, too, something we'd always done together, but now she preferred to go solo. "It's my me time," she explained when I suggested tagging along. Her appearance changed subtly as well. Anna had always been naturally beautiful, but now she put more effort into her outfits, sleek dresses instead of her usual jeans, bold lipstick where she used to go barefaced. I told myself it was just a phase, maybe something to help her feel better about herself, but the doubts began to swirl. The tipping point came on a Wednesday night. I'd gone to bed early, exhausted from a long day at work, but woke up in the middle of the night to find Anna's side of the bed empty. I padded downstairs, expecting to find her watching TV or maybe working on her laptop. Instead, I found her sitting in the kitchen, her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in a low, hushed tone. "No, he's asleep. We can talk for a bit," she was saying, her back turned to me. I froze in the doorway, my heart pounding. Who was she talking to? And why did she sound so intimate? I backed away before she noticed me, retreating to the bedroom and lying awake, my mind racing. Was I imagining things? Reading too much into a perfectly innocent conversation? But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The next morning, I tried to shake it off. "Who were you talking to last night?" I asked over breakfast, keeping my tone light. Anna didn't even flinch. "Oh, that was Jasmine again. She was having a mini meltdown about wedding stuff." You know how bridesmaids are. Her lie was smooth, but the slight tension in her shoulders gave her away. The doubt gnawed at me like a slow burn, simmering just beneath the surface of our everyday life. I hated the way it made me feel, paranoid, like I was betraying her trust just by suspecting something. But the signs kept piling up, and they weren't so easy to dismiss anymore. The gym became her favorite escape. She'd head out almost every evening, sometimes twice on weekends. I'd offered to pick her up once or twice, but she always declined. Don't worry, babe, she'd say with a little laugh. I need the cool-down walk after. And then there was the laughter, those soft, secretive chuckles she'd let out while staring at her phone. I caught her one evening, curled up on the couch, her screen lighting up her face. She was smiling, biting her bottom lip in a way that made my stomach knot. What's so funny? I asked, trying to sound casual. She startled, quickly locking her phone. Oh, nothing. Just a stupid meme from Jasmine. That name again. Jasmine. The supposed source of all these mysterious texts and late-night calls. But something about her reaction felt off, forced, rehearsed. That night, I made a decision I never thought I'd have to make. I was going to check her phone. I waited until she fell asleep, her steady breathing filling the room as I lay wide awake beside her. My heart was pounding in my chest as I reached for her phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a soft glow, and there it was, a lock screen. Damn. I stared at it for a moment, debating whether to put it back. But then I remembered something. Anna wasn't the most cautious with passwords. I tried Caleb's birthdate, my own birthday, even her old college dorm number. Nothing. But on the fourth try it opened. What I found made my blood run cold. There, in her messages, was a name I didn't recognize. Marcus. There were no photos, no overtly suggestive texts, but the thread was filled with casual, flirty banter that sent a chill through me. Marcus. Can't wait for tomorrow. You looked incredible today. Anna. You're too sweet. Just don't distract me too much, winky face. And then the kicker. Marcus. Next time, I'm bringing the wine. Your place or mine? Anna. Haha, we'll see, maybe somewhere more exciting. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Somewhere more exciting? What the hell did that mean? I scrolled further back, looking for more evidence, but she'd been careful. The messages didn't go far enough to paint a clear picture, but they were enough to confirm what I'd been dreading. My stomach churned as I locked her phone and placed it back on the nightstand. Lying there in the dark, I felt like the walls were closing in on me. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but the words stuck in my throat. Morning came, and Anna woke up with her usual bright smile. Morning, babe, she said, leaning over to kiss me on the cheek. Morning, I mumbled, my voice thick with unspoken accusations. She didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did and was just pretending everything was fine. Either way, I couldn't bring myself to look her in the eye. The day dragged on in a haze of anxiety. Every time Anna's phone buzzed, I flinched. Every time she smiled at me, I wondered how many of those smiles she'd shared with Marcus. I couldn't keep pretending. That evening, I decided to follow her. It felt wrong, sneaky, underhanded, but I needed answers. Anna was heading to the gym, as usual. She kissed me on the cheek as she grabbed her bag. Don't wait up, she said with a laugh. I might be late tonight. Going to grab a smoothie after. I nodded, feigning nonchalance. Have fun. As soon as the door closed behind her, I grabbed my keys and followed. She drove to the gym, just like she said she would. I parked a few spaces away, far enough not to be noticed but close enough to keep an eye on her. She walked inside, her gym bag slung over one shoulder, and I waited. For 20 minutes, I sat in the car, my pulse racing. I began to wonder if I was overreacting, if maybe this really was just a gym trip after all. But then I saw him. A tall man with broad shoulders and dark skin stepped out of a sleek black car, gym bag in hand. He walked into the building with the kind of confidence that turned heads, and a few minutes later, Anna emerged, smiling brightly. She hugged him like they were old friends, or maybe something more. They walked back to his car, chatting animatedly, and then got in together. My stomach dropped. I followed at a distance as they drove to a nondescript motel on the outskirts of town. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. They parked, and I watched as they got out, laughing, and walked inside. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the motel door. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts: anger, betrayal, heartbreak. I wanted to storm inside, to confront them both, to demand answers. But instead I just sat there, paralyzed by the weight of what I'd seen. When Anna returned home later that night, she was as cheerful as ever. "The smoothie place had a new flavor," she said, holding up an empty cup. "Strawberry banana. You'd love it." I couldn't bring myself to respond. My voice felt trapped in my throat, heavy with the truth I now carried. She tilted her head, studying me. "You okay? You look off." "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. But I wasn't fine. I was anything but fine. I couldn't sit on the truth any longer. The following evening, as we sat on opposite ends of the couch, I decided to confront her. My heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself think. "Anna," I started, my voice tight. "Can we talk?" She glanced up from her phone, her brow furrowing slightly. "Of course. What's up?" I hesitated, searching her face for any sign of guilt, any crack in the mask she wore so well. "Are you happy?" I asked finally. She blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "Of course I'm happy. Why wouldn't I be?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Because lately it feels like there's a distance between us. Like you're somewhere else." She set her phone down and sighed. "This again? Look, if this is about me spending time at the gym or hanging out with friends." "It's not about the gym," I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. Anna stiffened, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Then what is it about?" I stared at her, feeling the anger and heartbreak bubbling to the surface. "It's about Marcus." Her face froze, the color draining from her cheeks. For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of her shock hanging heavy in the air. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know," I said simply, my voice steadier than I expected. "I know about the texts, the motel, everything." Her eyes darted to the side, as if searching for an escape. "You're being ridiculous," she said weakly. "Marcus is just a friend. Don't—" I cut her off, my voice low and firm. "Don't insult my intelligence by lying to my face." She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, her hands trembling in her lap. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice breaking despite my efforts to stay composed. "How long have you been lying to me?" Anna looked down at her hands, silent. "Answer me," I demanded, the anger spilling over. She flinched at the sharpness of my tone but finally looked up, tears welling in her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to mean anything," she whispered. My chest tightened, the air in the room suddenly feeling too thick to breathe. "What does that even mean, Anna? You didn't just trip and fall into this." Her tears spilled over, and she buried her face in her hands. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I didn't want to hurt you." "Hurt me?" I repeated bitterly, standing up and pacing the room. "Do you even realize what you've done? You didn't just hurt me, you destroyed everything we built together." "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice muffled. "It just happened." "That's not an excuse," I snapped, turning to face her. "You made a choice, Anna. Over and over again you chose him. Not me. Not us. Him." She sobbed, her shoulders shaking, but I couldn't find any sympathy in my heart. Not now. Not after what I'd seen. "Why?" I asked finally, my voice breaking. "Why wasn't I enough?" She looked up at me, her tear-streaked face filled with regret. "It wasn't about you," she said quietly. "It was me. I felt lost. Unseen. Like I was just going through the motions. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. So you found someone else to make you feel alive? Someone else to give you what I couldn't? Her silence was answer enough. The days that followed were a blur of anger, heartbreak, and suffocating silence. Anna tried to explain, to justify, but every word felt like another betrayal. It was a mistake, she kept saying. I love you, not him. But the words felt hollow. How could I believe her? How could I trust anything she said when she'd spent months lying to me? I started sleeping in the guest room, unable to bear being so close to her. The nights were the hardest, lying awake, replaying every moment in my head, wondering where I'd gone wrong. Anna made attempts to repair the damage, to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. She'd leave me notes, send me texts, try to initiate conversations. But I couldn't bring myself to respond. One evening, as I sat alone in the kitchen nursing a beer, she came in and sat across from me. Can we please talk? She asked softly, her eyes red and puffy from crying. I didn't look up. What's there to talk about? I know I hurt you, she said, her voice trembling. But I want to make this right. I want us to fix this. Fix this? I repeated, finally looking at her. How do you fix something like this, Anna? How do you fix breaking someone's trust, destroying their faith in you? She reached across the table, her hand brushing mine, but I pulled away. I'll do whatever it takes, she said, desperation creeping into her voice. Therapy, counseling, anything. Just don't give up on us. I stared at her, torn between the love I still felt for her and the searing pain of her betrayal. Do you even understand what you've done to me? To us? I asked, my voice shaking. You didn't just cheat, Anna. You took everything good between us and set it on fire. She started crying again, her sobs echoing in the quiet kitchen. I know, she whispered. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I can't imagine my life without you. Please, just give me a chance to make this right. I stood up, unable to handle her tears or the weight of the conversation. I need space, I said, walking away. I can't do this right now. The next few weeks were filled with tension. I threw myself into work, trying to escape the chaos at home. Anna tried to reach out, but I kept my walls up, unsure if I could ever let her back in. One night, after putting Caleb to bed, I sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey, staring out into the dark. I thought about everything we'd been through, the life we'd built together, the dreams we'd shared. Was it all worth salvaging? Or was it too far gone? I heard the door creak open behind me, and Anna stepped out, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Can I sit? She asked hesitantly. I nodded, and she sat down next to me, her presence both comforting and painful. Do you hate me? She asked quietly, breaking the silence. I shook my head. I don't hate you, I said. But I don't know how to love you right now. Her face crumpled, and she buried her head in her hands. I don't know how I let it get this far, she said, her voice thick with tears. I was selfish and stupid, and I ruined the best thing in my life. I sighed, the weight of her words settling over me. I don't know if we can come back from this, I said honestly. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at you the same way again. I'll wait, she said, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. As long as it takes, I'll wait for you to find your way back to me. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in the house was unbearable. We operated like roommates who barely spoke, exchanging only the necessary words about Caleb's schedule or the bills. Anna tried to be patient, to show she was committed to making amends, but I was stuck in a loop of resentment and doubt. One evening, Caleb asked me a question that cut through me like a blade. Dad, why don't you and Mom laugh anymore? I froze, the words catching me off guard. What do you mean, buddy? He looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. You used to laugh a lot. Like all the time. Did I do something bad? No, I said quickly, pulling him into a hug. You didn't do anything wrong, Caleb. Sometimes grown-ups just forget how to laugh. But it's not your fault. Okay? He nodded, but the look on his face lingered with me long after I'd tucked him into bed. It was a wake-up call, a reminder that this wasn't just about Anna and me. Our son was caught in the middle of our mess, and he deserved better. That night, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone, vacations, birthdays, random candid shots of Anna laughing with Caleb or cuddling on the couch. I missed those moments, the simplicity of the happiness we used to share. I didn't know if we could get back there, but for Caleb's sake, I decided to try. The next day, I told Anna we needed to talk. She looked nervous but hopeful as we sat across from each other in the living room. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I began, watching her face fall slightly. "But I am willing to try. For Caleb." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "That's all I'm asking for," she said quietly. "I need transparency," I continued. "No more secrets. No more lies. I want access to your phone, your emails, everything." "Of course," she said without hesitation. "Whatever you need. And we're going to counseling," I added. "Both of us. Together and separately." "I'll call tomorrow," she promised. There was a long pause as we sat there, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. Finally, I sighed and ran a hand through my hair. "This isn't going to be easy," I said. "I know," she replied. "But I'll do whatever it takes." Counseling was hard. The first few sessions felt like reopening old wounds, ripping off bandages that hadn't even begun to heal. I vented my anger, my heartbreak, while Anna sat quietly, taking it all in. When it was her turn to speak, she admitted to feeling neglected, lonely, and unappreciated, but never justified her actions. "It wasn't his fault," she said during one session, her voice thick with emotion. "I made my own choices, and they were wrong. I destroyed the trust between us, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to fix it." The therapist asked me how I felt hearing that, and I struggled to find the words. "It helps," I admitted finally. "But it doesn't erase what she did." Healing wasn't linear. Some days I felt like we were making progress, like maybe we had a chance. Other days I was overwhelmed by doubt and anger, replaying the betrayal in my mind. But for Caleb, I kept going. Counseling brought out truths we'd buried for years. I hadn't realized how disconnected we'd become until the therapist laid it bare for us. Anna spoke about how isolated she felt while I was working long hours, and I admitted how I'd pulled away emotionally, assuming everything was fine when it wasn't. But there were moments, fleeting, fragile moments, when I could see a glimmer of what we'd once had. Like the night we sat on the porch after a particularly hard session. Caleb was asleep, and the air was cool, carrying the scent of rain. "I miss us," Anna said softly, breaking the silence. I glanced at her, unsure how to respond. "I miss us too," I admitted, the words feeling both true and bittersweet. She looked down at her hands, fidgeting nervously. "Do you think we can ever get back to that? To the way we used to be?" I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I think we can try. That's all we can do." She nodded, her expression a mix of hope and uncertainty. Things didn't change overnight. There were still moments when I'd catch myself doubting her, wondering if she was truly committed to rebuilding or if she was just trying to ease her own guilt. But there were also moments of genuine effort on her part. She quit the gym where she'd met Marcus, saying it wasn't worth the pain it had caused. She made a point of being more present, putting down her phone, engaging with Caleb and me in ways she hadn't in months. One evening, she surprised me by making my favorite dinner, the one she used to cook when we were first married. As we sat at the table, Caleb chattering away about his day at school, I felt a flicker of warmth that I hadn't felt in a long time. "Thank you," I said quietly as we cleared the dishes. She looked up at me, her eyes soft. "For what?" "For trying," I said. Her lip trembled, and she nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. But there were still cracks. Trust didn't return easily, and I found myself hypervigilant, checking her phone and emails even when I didn't want to. I hated what it was turning me into, paranoid, suspicious, but I couldn't help it. One night, I found a text from Jasmine, the friend she'd used as an alibi before. Jasmine. Thinking of you. Let's grab coffee soon. Anna. Absolutely. I'd love to catch up. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. Even though the text seemed innocent, it took me back to all the lies she told, the nights she'd used Jasmine's name to cover her tracks. Are you okay? Anna's voice startled me, and I quickly locked the screen. Yeah, I said, slipping her phone back onto the nightstand. She sat down beside me, her expression tentative. You don't have to check my phone, you know. If you're worried, just ask me. I looked at her, searching her face for any sign of deceit, but all I saw was exhaustion and regret. I don't want to have to check, I admitted. I don't know how to trust you yet. I understand, she said quietly. And I'll wait as long as it takes. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, cautiously, we began to rebuild. There were good days when the laughter returned, and bad days when the weight of the past hung over us like a storm cloud. But for the first time in a long time, we were moving forward, together. The months stretched into a year, and the fragile bridge between us grew sturdier, though the cracks were still visible. Caleb became the glue that held us together, his presence reminding us of what we had to fight for. One Saturday, Anna suggested a day trip to the beach, something we hadn't done as a family in years. The suggestion caught me off guard. Spontaneity had always been her strong suit, but it had been missing for a while. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't sure I was ready for such a normal outing, afraid it would feel forced or superficial. But Caleb's excitement pushed me to agree. We packed a cooler and drove out early, the car filled with Caleb's chatter about the waves and the sandcastles he wanted to build. Anna sat in the passenger seat, sneaking glances at me when she thought I wasn't looking. At the beach, something unexpected happened. For the first time in what felt like forever, I laughed, a genuine, unguarded laugh, as Caleb buried me in the sand. Anna joined in, piling more sand on top of me until only my head was visible. Look, Dad's a mermaid, Caleb declared, and Anna snorted, covering her mouth to stifle a giggle. I turned to her, surprised by how much I missed that sound. For a brief moment, it felt like the past didn't matter, that we were just a family, enjoying the sun and the waves. That night, as we put Caleb to bed, Anna lingered in the hallway, watching me read him a story. When I came out, she was standing there, her arms wrapped around herself. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For today, she replied. For giving me a chance to make you smile again. I didn't respond, but I gave her a small nod before heading to bed. Despite moments like these, the road was anything but smooth. The shadows of Marcus and the betrayal he represented lingered, creeping into quiet moments and threatening to ruin them. I couldn't help but wonder if I'd ever be free of those thoughts. One night, during a counseling session, I voiced the question that had been haunting me. How do I stop thinking about it? About them? The therapist nodded, as if expecting the question. You may never completely stop thinking about it, she said. But it's not about forgetting, it's about learning how to live with it. The goal isn't to erase the past. It's to build a future strong enough to hold it. I mulled over her words for days, trying to decide if I believed them. Could we really build something strong enough to withstand everything we'd been through? A few weeks later, Anna came to me with an envelope. I've been working on this, she said, handing it to me. I opened it to find a handwritten letter, pages of raw, heartfelt words spilling out onto the paper. She had written about her guilt, her shame, her love for me, and her commitment to earning back my trust. I know words can't fix what I broke, she said, her voice trembling. But I wanted you to know how much I regret everything, and how much I want to make things right. For you. For us. I read the letter late into the night, and for the first time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we could move forward. A year after the truth came to light, our marriage looked nothing like it had before. It wasn't the easy, carefree relationship we once had, it couldn't be. But it was honest, raw, and strangely, it felt more real. There were still hard days. I would catch myself wondering if I'd made the right choice in staying. Trust didn't come easily, and there were moments when the doubts crept back in. But there were also moments of quiet joy, Caleb's laughter, Anna's genuine efforts to rebuild, and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, we were on the right track. One evening, after Caleb was asleep, Anna and I sat together on the porch, the air warm and still. She handed me a mug of tea and sat down beside me, her knees drawn to her chest. "I've been thinking," she said, breaking the silence. "About what?" "About us. About what we've been through. And I know I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful for you, for giving us a second chance." I looked at her, the woman I had loved for so many years, and for the first time, I saw her not as the person who had betrayed me, but as someone who was trying, truly trying, to make amends. "I'm not sure where we'll end up," I admitted. "But I think we're heading in the right direction." She reached out, her fingers brushing against mine, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't pull away. The years ahead weren't perfect, but they were ours. We built a new foundation on the ruins of the old one, stronger and more resilient. And while the scars of the past never fully disappeared, they became part of our story, a reminder of how far we'd come and how much we'd fought to hold on to what mattered most. In the end, love wasn't about being perfect. It was about choosing each other, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. And every day, we made that choice. Together.